Hello, movie lovers. Welcome home. My name is Amy Henserling, and you are listening to Watch This List. Today is a very special comfort bonus episode with my pals Jetta, the Iron Cupcake, and AJ. Actually, AJ, I don't even know what your handle is. Is it your
My
name?
name, yeah.
Okay. Well, AJ was not as creative, and mine is also my name. Just
Yeah, you can't
backslash
say
it.
anything.
Yeah, I can't say anything. Never mind. Jetta is the only cool person in this episode who
Absolutely true.
actually came up with a handle that isn't her name. Actually, Jetta, I didn't even know your name for the longest time because you didn't really introduce yourself on Letterboxd as Jetta.
I was trying to be anonymous, that's true. But now that I've opened up, I've gotten to know people. Now it's common knowledge.
Meanwhile, AJ and I over here have been out in the open
Yeah, we
the
throw
entire
ourselves out there.
Yeah.
Nothing to hide.
No,
Although AJ, you are not in your picture.
I am not.
Would you ever be?
There are too many good scenes from movies to use as your profile picture.
Jetta, yours used to be what for the longest time?
I've changed them a bunch of times over the years. I had a James Ensor painting. I had an image of Colin Farrell from Daredevil, which was very important.
I recall this.
Needed to have that bullseye. I don't know. I've changed them a few times, but I think it's just more fun to have me there.
Yes, I like to see your face. I like to see people's face. It probably reminds me of like old school Facebook, not new Facebook, but like 2007 Facebook.
Pre-meta.
Yeah. Yes. But you guys are here together because you have very similar tastes for one. For two, I think this is probably the only way that I would have watched these four films. Would have been for both of you. And I think that I saw enough common themes in all four of these that speak to both your aesthetics. Do you both agree with that, would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can go with that.
Yeah. We'll kind of unpack them as we go along. But I've had AJ on the show, I think once, and then Jetta 3 times. So, Jetta, this is your fourth,
I've been on 4 times, I think.
You've been on 4 times.
Disaster movies, From Beyond, Flesh for Frankenstein, and then the double Hidden Gems one. Wow. Captives and American Perfect.
Is that the most anyone has been on?
I actually think it is besides Frank Ritz. We can't discount Frank Ritz.
No,
he will kill me. Yeah. But Jetta is the reigning MVP of Watch This List, as has been known for quite some time. So, without further ado, we're going to start, guys. AJ, you're going to kick us off with your first pick, which is drum roll.
So our first pick is Artists and Models from 1955, directed by the great Frank Tashlin. And it has Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin, and then the great Dorothy Malone and Shirley MacLaine.
Yes, and what is this movie about?
So it's about a lot of things, and they don't always connect. Basically, Jerry Lewis is, as he usually is, kind of a man-child, obsessed with comic books, and his roommate is Dean Martin, who is Dean Martin, so he's suave, sleepy, trying to get up with basically anyone. And Jerry Lewis is obsessed with, what's the name of the character in the movie? Is it just Batwoman?
Oh, yeah. Jetta, what's her name?
Yeah, I don't think she has an actual name. It's just the illustration.
No, the character has a name.
Yeah.
It's a comic character.
We didn't do our research.
It's Batman. If Batman was a woman, it's Batwoman.
Yeah.
And the writer of the Batwoman comic is Dorothy Malone, who lives upstairs in their apartment building. The model for Batwoman is Shirley MacLaine. And once he sees Shirley MacLaine in the Batwoman getup, kind of all hell breaks loose and just antics ensue over the course of the movie. The last third of the movie is like a spy kidnapping plot, but it is what it is. It goes all over the place. It really fits what Frank Tashlin's great at. It fits it kind of fits what Jerry Lewis became great at. And it's just a fun movie.
So what do you guys, if you had to say like your favorite things about this movie, like top 2 qualities, what are the things that stand out most to you? Jetta, I'll let you go first.
Well, I think the live action cartoon aspect of it is what's so great. I mean, it feels like the pages of a comic come to life. It has that same vitality and colorful aspects to it. The costumes, the cinematography, just like everything about the way it looks is so appealing. It just draws you in, or at least it draws me in. And AJ. I think we both respond so much to that.
Yeah.
And just watching these great actors, I think if you love the actors, I don't love Jerry Lewis, but I like him in this context. So I think if you enjoy the people in it enough, watching them interact is just fantastic. Like, I love Shirley MacLaine and I love Dorothy Malone. I mean, they're all fantastic. So I think getting to see them, especially since it was the very beginning of Shirley MacLaine's career, just to see that she was already fully formed. She was Shirley. So it's just great. I love seeing the way that they all play off of one another.
Okay. I got you. And I think that that's one of the through lines with all of you guys' films is that you both love color. Like pop. Like not I don't mean just like there's no subtlety.
Right.
It's maximalism.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so AJ, what would be your favorite things about this movie?
So this I do in my like marathon watching. This year I did Jerry Lewis, Frank Tashlin, and Dorothy Malone. So I started with this because I hit all 3 of them.
Wow.
I know, it worked out. So I love all 3. I love Jerry Lewis more when he becomes Jerry Lewis and he's doing his own thing post like The Bellboy and The Ladies' Man. But this is a great example of when he works before that, when he's still doing the Dean Martin thing. I think his character here is not obnoxious as obnoxious. It's still pretty obnoxious. So that works. But like the maximalism in the color is fantastic. Like Jetta said, this is a live action cartoon. Frank Tashlin was a Looney Tunes animator. He wasn't like the Chuck Jones, Bob Clampett, Tex Avery level of animators back then. But he was like the level below that. So he probably did like 40 or 50 Looney Tunes cartoons in the 40s into the 50s. So he knew what to do. And it worked because this feels like a cartoon. It's in your face. It is a comic. It's literally just a comic come to life. Like when Shirley MacLaine is walking around in the Batwoman outfit, it is perfect. That is what we need, that movie. And yeah, I like that it goes all over the place. I like that the last third devolves into some weird Anita Ekberg spy plot.
Well, there's not enough Anita Ekberg. She's the model.
No.
I think Ava Gabor is the femme fatale.
Oh, yeah. We need more
also
of
in a
both.
bad costume. We need more Anita. Anita would have made it 5 stars.
Oh, also, y'all didn't even mention that they're singing.
Yeah, it's a musical.
Well, yeah, Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis.
If Dean Martin's there, you got to have music.
Yeah.
I had no idea that it was a musical, and then all of a sudden they were singing, and I was like, no, actually, I think isn't the first song Jerry Lewis playing the
when they're singing about having imagination, yeah.
Right, which reminded me of the Dr. T, 1,000 Fingers of Dr. T, because there's a song about...
That, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, there's a song about the imagination and dreams. Remember that he sings? It's sorrowful. Like I cried during it, so it's not quite the same vibe.
Right.
And that song, really quick. This movie is huge on the French director Jacques Rivette. Like huge for him. And his biggest movie, Celine and Julie, is basically that song come to life. Because in that Jerry Lewis song, I don't remember the lyrics. He's basically talking about life is more fun when you're doing what you want and you're pretending. Pretending
right.
Through life is more fun. And that is literally the plot of Celine and Julie. Like they pretend, they go into movies, they go into TV shows, they solve murder mysteries in movies, and it works. And Jacques Rivette worshipped this movie and Frank Tasman, as he should.
That's the boating one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Selena. Yeah. That one's like 3 hours, and it's been in my watch list since the beginning of time.
All of his movies are like, that might be one of his shortest movies.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
like his movie literally about artists and models is what's the one with Michael Piccoli and Emmanuel Beret, and it's like 4.5, 5 hours.
Jetta.
La Belle Noise.
Is it
Noiseuse? I don't speak French.
Noiseuse.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. That sounds good.
That's literally just a movie about an artist and models. That'd be a bold double feature with artists and models.
And you'd be there for quite some time.
It would work.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. I've done worse.
Dorothy Malone is in what else?
Written on the Wind.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Tarnished Angels.
It's ironic, Jetta, because when we get to a movie that's lower down on this list, I mistakenly thought that the lead actor was Robert Stack. And
right.
I was like, oh, he's on Written on the Wind. And Jetta was like, Amy, no.
It's a different
Well, I was going to say Unsolved Mysteries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's in a lot.
Okay, so Artists and Models is a bit zany. I would say
good word.
Very zany. Jet, do you have memorabilia for this film, or do you have it for other films down the line? I need to know when to call on you.
Oh, no, mine is for the last film.
Of course it is.
Mm-hmm.
Saving the best for last for Jetta, for her permanent crush.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are not familiar with Jerry Lewis, I would say this is probably, I don't know if this is the best one to do for him.
The Bellboy, that would be like those two. I feel like would be great introductions.
It depends
for someone who's
on
totally
the Jerry
uninitiated.
Lewis you want.
Okay.
Yeah, like if you want the Dean Martin early Jerry Lewis, I think this is probably the best. If you want Jerry Lewis more like as an artist and not what he is here, yeah, Bellboy.
The Nutty Professor too. I mean, that's just
like basically anything he made between 60 and 65 when they were all great.
Who is each of your favorite characters in this film? Jetta, you go first.
Well, it's got to be Shirley's character.
I knew it. Yes, of course.
Obviously.
Why?
Well, I mean, I can't say that I've ever been obsessed with astrology in the way that she is, but I love that she is so driven and she knows exactly what she wants to do and she'll do it. So,
okay.
Can't not love that.
The Moxie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. AJ?
Character or actor? Character. Okay.
Because what traits? Because she just named she's not talking about Shirley, although Shirley's kind of
Shirley would
similar.
be your choice for favorite actor too, I guess. But,
probably. Right, Jet.
Yeah.
Character-wise, I really like Shirley when she's interacting with Jerry Lewis. I think that works really well because normally Jerry Lewis is the over-the-top screamy one, and in this, that's Shirley MacLaine. But I have to go with Dorothy Malone. I love her in this movie. I love Dorothy Malone in everything, but especially in this movie.
I think in Love maybe too, AJ.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think there's a crush component involved.
Well, it's hard to deny I mean, for me, when you see Shirley in that Inamorata number, and she is so over the top that Jerry can't deal with it. I mean, that is like
so good.
The absolute best. Although I still think the funniest scene is definitely that scene in the chiropractor office. I mean, that's truly the most ridiculous.
Yeah. That's like the scene that's the scene that probably works the best for me for Jerry in this movie. Is it just fits his character so well. He's relaxed. He's like the most relaxed one in that scene because he's the one not in a knot.
Right.
And it works. It's nice seeing Jerry not scream.
I like the one where he's running up and down the stairs to give the phone message to Dean Martin, who's taking a bath and just refuses to get out.
Right.
Yeah, I
Well,
love
no.
Dean Martin in this movie too. He's so lazy.
He's
just
so
laid
lazy.
back and just doing his thing.
Yeah.
Well, there is also this element that I think is true of all of their films. This like very, very definite homoerotic component to it. The fact that they're roommates, and the fact that like Dean Martin is just like very obviously the sex symbol, which I think was true of all of his films, but like just like the fact that he's always shirtless. I don't know, there's just something fascinating to me about like the way that those characters are joined at the hip. Like you can't really imagine how they'd live without one another. Like they just always have to be there. And I feel like people have written about that. So that's always interesting to me too.
Yeah, but they like famously did not get along at all, right?
Well, I think they had a kind of love it or hate it thing going on. Like they
Yeah.
on each other's nerves to the point that they had to break up, but they really
Yeah.
like when it was good, they loved each other. So
Okay.
it was contentious though.
Yeah, by
sure.
this point, they were not on good terms.
Right.
Right.
I think it was like 53, 54 is when they really started grating on each other. And I think this was the last one, if not second to last one. So
I think
they
the
broke
last
up
is Partners or Hollywood or Bust. One of those.
That's the other Tashlin one. So that's the one that's next to this one. So it's either right before it or right after it. I can't remember.
Those are from 56.
Yeah, they made up after they got together again. So that's nice.
But I think
Okay.
Jerry's ego was such that he needed to break up. He needed to like do his own thing. So
And he
it was
exploded
inevitable.
after this. I mean, like Jerry Lewis was a pop culture phenomenon in the 60s.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. My dad watched this movie with me and he was like, either you like him or you don't.
Very
Like,
much so.
There is no middle ground. Yeah, he was like, this is like and it's pretty instant whether whether you do or not. It's not an acquired taste.
That's why for me I feel like I like him better in these movies with Dean Martin. I need the balance. Like for the most part in his solo movies I feel like too much even for me. So I like having them together. I feel like they work so fantastically together. Kind of a necessary thing.
Too much even for Jetta
much.
Saying it.
Is saying it.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the next one, which is another OTT. Jetta, introduce us to the one that I liked the most of these four.
So this is Vibes from 1988, directed by Ken Kwapis, and it stars the fantastic group of Cyndi Lauper, Jeff Goldblum, Peter Falk, the late wonderful Julian Sands. It is indescribable, frankly. So to even give a synopsis would just not be doing it justice. It has to do with psychics. It has to do with a trip that spans from New York to Ecuador. It has to do with the possibility of finding gold, but it might actually be an energy source. And the IMDb described it as romancing the Ghostbusters in the Temple of Doom.
Correct.
So that's about all you need to know. I mean, it's these absolutely insane people going off on this wonderful journey. They don't really know what they're doing. They're just going to figure it out as they go along. They're going to get psychic readings off of people and objects and fall in love along the way. And I feel like that's all anyone needs to know. Either you know that you like it or you don't. And you liked it.
I did. I liked it very much. The spirit of this one is a bit cheeky, I think. Like winking, nodding to the camera, I feel, especially with Goldblum.
Definitely.
Like there are scenes I feel like he is watching the other people act and he's just like he's
baffled.
Clearly like reacting to them as himself. He's not in character. But maybe that's kind of Goldblum in general.
Well, I will say, in Cyndi Lauper's memoir, first of all, she didn't like working with him, which you would never know based on their chemistry because they're fantastic together. She didn't like him, and she said it was because he was quote-unquote weird. So whatever that means, that's his natural state.
I don't think Cyndi Lauper was that normal.
No, for her to think that he was too weird when we already know he's weird. I mean,
look
who
in the
knows?
mirror, babe.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's the perfect straight man in this movie.
Yes.
Like it could not be cast better.
Well, and AJ, talk to us about Peter Falk. I feel like you
Yeah.
I feel like that's what really. So I feel like Cindy is what reminds me of Jetta, but then Falk reminds me of AJ.
I take that.
Yeah.
I mean, he knows there's a city of gold in quotes, and he finds out that there are psychics in New York. And our first time seeing him, he's just across the street taking photos of Jeff Goldblum and Julian Sands.
Holding hands.
Yeah, and then Julian Sands just chases after him and he runs away. And then we don't see him again until Cyndi Lauper comes home one day and Peter Falk is in her fridge eating an ice cream bar, just like,
as one must do.
Yeah, and Cyndi Lauper's like brandishing a shotgun at him, and he's just there like in the perfect Columbo face, just like, hey, can you put your shotgun down? I'm trying to eat my ice cream bar. Also, I need you to come with me to Ecuador.
That shotgun belonged to her former boyfriend. Of course.
For reasons unknown, he was like, why did your ex have a shotgun? And she's like, I forgot what her response was, but it's quite funny. Like she
probably someone with a criminal record, as she is wont to date.
Yeah, she has. There's so many good one-liners. Honestly, what sold me on this movie was the script. I feel like there are so many really strange ways that people react and words that they use that are odd, and so it just really puts you in the mood.
There's the sequence when they're in Ecuador and Peter Falk gives the shirt to Jeff Goldblum. So Jeff Goldblum's like psychic power is he can touch something and he knows where it's been and like what's interacted with it. So he holds the shirt and they had been told it's Peter Falk's son and he got like lost in the mountains or something. And he holds the shirt and he's like, this is not your son's shirt. And then Peter Falk's spiral trying to explain. It's like, oh, did I say my son? I meant my
father.
Yeah, father.
Who was the same age.
Yeah, it's like this shirt belonged to someone your same age. My father remarried. Yeah, and it's just like, yeah, my stepfather went to school with me and we were best friends and my mom seduced him. And it's just like
in the yearbook,
a 2-minute spiral of just Peter Falk trying to explain his way out of it. And it's pure gold. It is such a well-written moment.
Oh, man.
Which honestly, it may just be Peter Falk like ad-libbing his way through that, knowing his background with like Cassavetes and all of them. He may just be coming up with all of that on the spot, but with as well written and as witty as the rest of this movie is, there has to be something in the script going off and then just letting him go off from a diving board.
Well, Jet, you and I were talking about the tango scene. Tell us about that. I love that whole sequence of where they see, what's his name? Ingo. And then tell us what happens in that scene.
Well,
it's great.
I love the idea that they're not sure why he's there. They think he could just be in Ecuador randomly. And they decide to do a tango to get away from him to come up with an alibi for why they're there. Which, I mean, the levels of insanity there are just too much. And it's just such a fantastic dance. I mean, it's great that this could just happen spontaneously. And then when they come back, they have to pretend like, oh, you're here? Wow. So and especially considering the fact that, you know, Jeff Goldblum and Cyndi Lauper didn't work well together, you know, like how
they have great chemistry.
I mean, yeah, you would never guess.
They can hide it.
Yeah. Yeah, and she also is in these outrageous outfits the entire time. Speaking of, like, if you guys bring it back to the colors and stuff, it's she's like a walking painting.
Her fashion is unbelievable. I mean, I would wear every single outfit she has.
I know you would. I thought of you the whole time.
Great.
And the hair.
Yes.
The hair too.
Oh my God. Well, we know how much I love a good haircut.
Yes, we'll get to that in the last pick.
Yes.
AJ, what about vibes do you find comforting?
I mean, the main three for sure. Just watching them interact together is fantastic. I love the setup of just their psychics hanging out in New York, and they're working with like a research institute to prove psychics are psychic.
Mm-hmm.
I love that Jeff Goldblum works at the Natural History Museum. That's amazing.
But they
Like
call it
there's
Cosmopolitan.
yeah, but it's the History Museum. There's that great sequence of him and Cyndi Lauper eating lunch under like in the elephant exhibit,
Mm-hmm.
and it feels good watching that. Like it's just so nice seeing it.
And I love the hospital scene as well. There's a
Yes.
lot of it's just a hilarious. It's like and then when the lady comes in and falls off the balcony, that whole sequence as well.
Elizabeth
there's just,
Pena.
yeah,
Also
there's so
great.
many. There's so many. It's almost like sketch comedy in a way, where there's like these vignettes of things that happen and have like a beginning, middle, and end to them. And then Julian Sands, of course, is like, the antagonist of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
But Jetta, what do you find comforting? I like how AJ summed that up, but how do you feel about it?
I think similarly, the feeling of I mean, I think this is true of all four films, but being with actors who I love, there is a comfort in watching them do what they do best, right? And there's this feeling of, I mean, I love Jeff Goldblum. He is like a lifelong favorite. So I feel like, it's amazing that I waited as long as I did to get to this movie. Like, I couldn't believe with all the other dozens of movies I've seen, somehow this one had eluded me. So getting this one, it just felt so perfect. For anyone who loves Jeff Goldblum that much, it's like, wow, where has this movie been all my life? So there's a comfort in that. And also loving Cyndi Lauper as a musician, watching her is just delightful. I mean, she's so, like, I don't know to what extent she ever studied acting. I'm guessing not. She's just such a natural. And Peter Falk is Peter Falk. So, it's like, how could you not love everything that's going on there?
Yeah, and it's also got a bunch of colorful supporting characters too, and it's a little bit of a mystery because we don't really know what this thing even is, and actually I still don't know.
I don't think it's important to know. It's sometimes a mystery is best left a mystery.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's just like a plot device in order to like move things along, but it's not like it's not that essential. And then it's a little bit of a rom-com as well, just like actually all of you guys' movies have a little bit of a rom-com feel to them, and a
New York setting to some degree.
The New York setting for Jet, and then the strong female presence is in all four too.
True.
Yeah. I try to find through lines between
that
people's
works.
insanity.
I didn't think of all of that.
Yeah. Okay, so Vibes, check it out, please. I loved it. AJ, introduce us with the next one for your Fonda.
Okay, so our next one is Sunday in New York, 1963, directed by Peter Tewksbury. It is a Jane Fonda movie. It is one of the best 60s Jane Fonda movies. Basically, Jane Fonda's brother, played by Robert Culp, is an airline pilot.
Cliff Robertson.
Cliff Robertson.
Robert Culp is her fiance. Cliff Robertson is the pilot. He gets his off day, so he's going to use the apartment to hook up with his girlfriend. And Jane Fonda, Mona. Jane Fonda randomly shows up from Albany into the big city, and she is in the apartment when Robertson shows up there. So that gets thrown askew, and then it's just kind of like a comedy of errors going around trying to figure out Jane Fonda running into the great Rod Taylor, who I love a lot, and them getting in some pickles, and then Cliff Robertson running around trying to find somewhere to shack up with Mona, and then eventually Jane Fonda's fiance comes in, and the third act of this movie is like lightning. It goes so fast that it's like it deserves a medal for what it does. It is astounding.
And what you both, I think I read in Jetta's review, which I really like. Jetta, if you could expound on this. You were talking, well, and we watched this together too, so we were texting during it, but like you were talking to me about like the Hays Code and how this was talking about sex and relationships in like a different way, like in terms of that context. So I am interested in if you gave us like not just the plot background, but like that particular one. I think that sort of enriches the experience.
Yeah, so I feel like when the code was put into place in 1934, that was kind of like a reset button because all of a sudden, all of the ability that films had to certain extents to talk about sexuality had to be gotten rid of, and then movies had to slowly work their way back into having that again. So over the course of the next few decades, you would have more and more, like through film noir, through certain films made in the 50s, getting up into the early 60s, you would have more and more frank conversations or senses of sexuality in the films. So by the time you get to this film, it's like Hollywood is getting back to the point where you can talk about relationships. And you said to me, it was an interesting thing. We were talking about, you know, what is the expectation put on Jane Fonda's character? What does she think of societal expectations? Were times different then? And I think it's less reflective of how times were different as much as Hollywood being different. Because I don't think that Rod Taylor's chivalrous nature is necessarily like how all men acted. I think it's more like this is what Hollywood could work with and how we could get to a place of being able to have Jane Fonda's character be interested in sex, but at the same time, there has to be some element of, well, it's a little old-fashioned. It's a little like, well, she has to find the one. So it's a little bit of both things going on.
Yeah, because AJ, I was like, I mean, I told Jetta, like, there's no man alive who would reject a virgin.
Right.
So
it's the construct of the story. Yeah.
It's a preposterous notion, in my opinion. So I was like, they had to do this in sort of a creative way to make us believe that someone would be like, oh, but like, you know, like basically, I don't sleep with beginners was a little bit absurd.
Right.
To me, especially when it's Jane Fonda. But they do sort of, I think they use that in a way to enable her to articulate a side that we don't normally hear. Would you say that's true, AJ?
Yeah, and I think going back to where Hollywood was at the time, the year before this movie, there's a movie called The Chapman Report, which is also a Jane Fonda movie. And that is just it is a catastrophe. It is not a good movie at all. It's supposed to be like a frank examination of sex, but it's like a therapist or a psychologist talking to different women about their experiences. And it is not a good movie. And it's very interesting seeing the jump from that to this movie, because this movie does what that movie wants to do like 100 times better. Even if it does go back to like a traditionalist ending, the journey there is, especially for 1963 Hollywood, like they're going out there in this. And I think it does a good job at that. I mean, yeah, I don't know. There's so many. I think adding in that it's Jane Fonda, and this is kind of led to her depiction, I guess, in media, especially in the 60s. It evolves a lot, and I think this is one of the best early depictions of her, especially when you pair with where Jane Fonda went, with movies like Clute or 9 to 5. Those really, really work with this movie. And she was pushing it in the early 60s, like really pushing boundaries. And it works. It works because the best part about this movie is it's just really entertaining. Even outside of all of that, it's a fun movie. It's got jazz everywhere. The one-liners work. Production design's great. New York City looks like New York City in the 60s.
Jetta, what do you think it says about relationships?
Well, I found myself thinking a lot about Lover Come Back, the movie with Doris Day and Rock Hudson. Because for me,
and Down with Love.
Yes, that too. I
Yeah.
mean, that's really supposed to be a satire, but, you know, I was
Yeah.
thinking about the ways that, I mean, Doris Day was always called, like, you know, the eternal virgin. So, I mean, it's like there is this interesting kind of balance between, well, in that movie, Doris Day would be willing to go to bed with Rock Hudson, except then something has to come up where it doesn't happen. So it's like there is this interesting sort of like tiptoeing to the line, but then going back because you ultimately want this fairy tale ending and like I don't know, can't have sex until marriage or something. So it's like it's this interesting sort of like, well, I like that it's a little bit risque, but we're not quite there yet where we can get more frank. So I like that this is part of this whole dialogue that we have in studying where sex like goes throughout the history of cinema. So this is just like one puzzle piece. So I don't
Well,
know exactly what it says about relationships because my feeling was at the I mean, we can spoil this, right?
yes, of
Yes.
course.
So at the end of the movie, of course, there's this wonderful ending where they get married, they have kids, it's fantastic. My feeling is Jane Fonda's character would have had sex if she felt like it was right. She just didn't want a guy who was like annoying and told terrible jokes and like did things that she felt were not, you know, equal to what she wanted. And my feeling is that she would have done that, but the ending kind of implies, well, that's probably not what happens. She probably does wait. So it's flawed for me. It's entertaining, but it's like, what is this actually telling us about her character? I don't know if that's an answer. I feel like it's a big question mark, but that's interesting because you're not entirely sure. And you don't know if that's because of what Hollywood was like or what people thought about relationships then or what. So I don't know. Interesting.
Because AJ, this is one that you also love, right?
Yes.
What is it? What is it that speaks to you about this? Because I feel like it's not just on a shallow level that you like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think going off what you're saying, Jetta, like I think there's a point to what it can go to, and there's just a wall there.
Right.
And I think it leaves us up to just, yeah, you can guess, you can just assume what you want to assume. And yeah, I think it's flawed at that point because it does walk back a lot of what it brings to the wall
Exactly.
earlier in the film. But like, I don't know. I feel like that's more Hollywood and where society is than what the characters would actually do. Like if these characters were written 10 years later, I don't think it's a question. Like I think it's I think that character of Jane Fonda would have had sex. I don't think it would have bothered her at all. I don't think it would have bothered the people around her.
No,
But
definitely not.
because it's 63 and they're like an nice society and like everything is quaint and happy, I think there has to be that, unfortunately. But I think it's really impressive that it gets there. A lot of those 60s, early 60s, like sex comedies are just kind of like blatantly misogynistic.
True. Yeah.
And I don't think this one hits that. It gives a lot more agency to Jane Fonda's character than it would to most. And I mean, it's just 1963 Jane Fonda. Like, you can do significantly worse.
The robes.
Yeah, the robes.
Oh, yeah. Rod Taylor in his robes.
There's a lot of being in the rain and needing to come back and wear a robe.
Yeah. And it's like Rod Taylor is like a warm blanket for me. Like 101 Dalmatians is always going to be my favorite Disney movie. He's, what's the name of the dad dog? He's the dad dog. Like Time Machine, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
The Birds.
Like it's just like Rod Taylor is just, those are like nostalgic movies I grew up with. So it's just seeing him there, seeing Jane Fonda, listening to the score, amazing score.
Another thing you guys have in common is the actors, the love of actors, because that's a through line for sure.
And it's funny thinking of the 60s as quaint, because if we were talking about a movie from the early 30s, it wouldn't feel quaint. It would feel like scandalous and salacious.
Yes.
So
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, like it's just the way that times change. It took time to get back to what we would think of as the ability to talk about subjects with candor. So it's just like
That's
the
what I
weird
was
way
thinking.
that time works.
Like Barbara Stanwyck is
Mhm.
very sultry,
Mhm.
very aggressive. She's not even like femme fatale in that way. She's just very like down, you know? She has
Yeah.
that energy about her, and that was a long time ago. So
Having that
Yeah.
directness.
And it almost
Exactly.
paints them as like doomed because of that.
Jetta, what's the movie you had for Cupcake Cinema that I loved that she was in?
Babyface.
Babyface. That was what year?
33.
Okay. That movie, she's basically pursuing men the entire time. Different ones.
All the way to the top.
The whole time.
All the way up the ladder.
top. Yes, and shamelessly as well. And there's no judgment.
Right.
So this movie feels way more wholesome than that does. And it's 30 years later.
Right.
30 some odd years later. So yeah, I think that historical context and the cultural context is very interesting.
And it's amazing thinking of
way.
Jane Fonda today. Like, think about the fact that she's still in the film business 60 years later, and she still feels like a very sex-positive presence, more so than ever. So that's
true.
Just amazing.
For our final film, it is a movie that Jetta loves that she has brought memorabilia for. So Jet, in addition to telling us what the heck this movie is, show us what you've brought for show and tell today.
Well, this is not specifically related to the movie, but it is related to the wonderful star of it. So this, one of my fantastic posters from my collection, look at that. It's Reanimator.
Ooh.
So,
oh my God.
Signed by Jeffrey, signed by Barbara. I think you can see that. It's on there somewhere.
Yes.
So, straight from my bedroom door. There you go.
So exciting. So exciting.
So, the film in question, Dr. Mordred, directed by both Charles and Albert Band, the fantastic father and son team who brought us so many wonderful B and Z grade movies. Called an original idea by Charles Band. Not really. It's essentially Doctor Strange. And Jeffrey Combs, Light of My Life, stars as Dr. Anton Mordred, who is, I think you'll agree, Amy, the picture of competence. He is...
Yes, that's what I would call him.
I called him a master of the universe, an expert criminologist, also runs an apartment building. He's secretly a landlord. And an unobtrusive one. I mean, he doesn't get in anyone's business. So basically, he is the perfect man. Also has a pet raven. So it's just everything. I don't know how you could go wrong. And the movie's 74 minutes. And like 4 of those minutes are credits. So I don't know how you couldn't love this, Amy. You told me it was not your kind of thing. But come on.
Jetta, you are selling me on a movie I didn't like.
You already saw it and didn't like it, but I'm telling you, you actually loved it. So
the way that you pitch things is just incredible. Don't you think, AJ? Like the way that she sells stuff, you're like, oh my gosh, I want to watch this right now. It's
how could you not love that outfit he wears with the blue and the cape, and it's perfect. I mean,
I don't know where to begin.
And those knives, what are those about?
An Albert Bandism. They're just there because the band,
I mean,
original ideas.
I don't even really know what to compare it to other than Doctor Strange, but it really is not. I mean, I guess it's the closest thing to that.
Yeah, Doctor Strange
pretty much.
It was this movie. It is unfair to compare it to Dr. Mordred.
But AJ, like, did you both give this 5 stars?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, and AJ just did too.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, what? Starting with AJ, why is this a 5-star film?
There are a lot of reasons. So, I grew up with comics. Like, I am I was a huge comic nerd. I don't really read comics that much anymore. Might be one of the reasons I loved Artists and Models as much as I do. But I loved Doctor Strange back in the day. I've hated every adaptation they've ever made of Doctor Strange. This is the version I always dreamed of. You have a stop motion T-Rex fighting a stop motion mammoth. skeletons.
Very Harryhausen-esque.
That's enough to like sell me if I was told there's a movie with that in it. You have an extra dimensional guardian who has no eyes, dressed like a Scotsman with a grenade launcher, whose accent is like Atlanta, Georgia. Like,
and it's incredibly easy to restore his sight. Yeah.
Jeffrey Combs just like does that. Okay, his eyes are back. They literally go from like bloody messes to just eyes. I love the cheesiness of it. I love how good Jeffrey Combs is at giving himself over to something and taking it professionally, even when it is as stupid as this movie. It works. Like he's able to just do it completely seriously. It gives it like, this is something that is not present in a lot of Charles Band movies and a lot of Full Moon movies. A lot of them understand that they're basically just like, I'm not going to call them garbage because I love a lot of them, but this movie is genuinely trying to be like better than a Full Moon cash-in at the video store. So it has like that sense of like heart to it, which I really like. The story is just ridiculous. I love the Doctor Strangeness of it all. And it's just like, when you find a movie that is not championed, you kind of just have to do it. And that's, I think, what we did.
Yes, Jetta.
I described it to you, Amy, as no budget, all heart.
Yes.
That's perfect.
Which is your MO all the way. Yes. Okay, so...
Oh, and we didn't even talk about the insane story about Yvette Naipar's husband.
Go
you
ahead.
remember that story, AJ, right? Where she was married to that guy who left her and then wouldn't pay the child support.
I forgot about that. That's,
And then he went missing in Mexico or something, and he was Olivia Newton-John's partner, so that's why I knew about it when it happened. But he just vanished in 2005, and I had no idea that he was ever married to Yvette Naipar, who is the love interest in this film, and also an incredible character. Weird, so weird. He just went missing, and people, of course, think that they've spotted him over the years. Nobody knows. But I love that there's this extra element to a story that already has a criminologist.
Plus, like, occult criminology is something awesome. That's a really cool field. Like that Jeffrey Combs apartment.
The greatest apartment of all time.
Yeah, like, come on. We're doing an episode with a lot of amazing apartments. Is there a good apartment in Vibes? Cyndi Lauper's apartment isn't anything special. Every other movie has fantastic apartments. This is probably the nicest because it's, Warlock powers to make it 10 times the size it should be.
Yeah, but the Sunday in New York apartment is fantastic.
I mean,
but this one has a coffee maker. A great coffee maker.
I'm going to assume Jane Fonda has a coffee maker in that apartment.
But it's not as good as Mordred's.
Probably true.
And Mordred's got a great robe.
True. Very true.
So you got to bring back the robe.
He has like an Ozymandias from Watchmen TV wall screen with just like 70 TVs watching all the news channels.
Oh, that reminded me of Sliver. Like, that's like William Baldwin's like Baldwin. Set of... Yeah.
And you've got that huge map. You've got the huge map that he like decides to stick something on in the middle of him talking to his raven, as one does. And then who's the lady with the hair, Jetta?
Well, Yvette Naipar is the lead. Yeah. And then, of course, there's Brian Thompson as the villain, Cabal, who I always describe as looking like a super muscular Klaus Kinski. I find it bizarre that he looks like Kinski, but also has like that hair that's like a paperback romance cover model. So I don't really know.
Fabio Kinski.
Yeah, it's like, it's so bizarre. It makes me uncomfortable, but it's very entertaining. And he has that very theatrical voice. So everything is so dramatic. And the two of them, him and Combs together, there's just something so wonderful about how much they sell the experience. You could believe anything they say. So How can you resist?
I'm at such a loss for words.
I mean,
that
I think you may need to watch some other full moon movies, and I could almost guarantee your appreciation for this movie will rise.
They'll skyrocket.
This is what I was told a lot when I did Giallo, was that when I started out and gave Tenebrae 1 star, it was like, no, Amy, you do not get
That
it.
hurt.
And you need an education. And I have since seen the error of my ways, and it's true. So I will concede that there are certain movies, or I guess subgenres, or just like production companies, like styles, where you do need sort of immersion in order to fully give yourself over to its oddballness.
But you loved From Beyond, so that kind of set the groundwork.
From Beyond, I don't think has a low budget feel. Do you guys?
No, that had like a way higher budget than this comparatively.
See?
Yeah, but that's also like comparing Stuart Gordon's direction to the bands is not exactly fair to the bands. But like the Stuart Gordon full moon movies definitely don't feel like the other full moon movies.
But it's crazy. It is wild and over the top. And this one, I feel like Dr. Mordred should be more accessible because it's just a superhero story, basically. I mean,
but it's not cinematic
really
Jet.
Well, yes, but it's not crazy. I mean, somebody's saving the universe.
Like Charles Band, when he kind of like cornered the video market for video stores back in the 80s with Full Moon, I think Full Moon has its own streaming service and everything. So I think it's that also I guess most of them are on Tubi, but at this point, like almost everything is on Tubi. So that doesn't really help get attention. But yeah, I don't know. I would love if more people watch this, because even people that know Full Moon movies, this is still pretty far down there. People like watching all the puppet masters and the like Evil Bong versus Gingerbread Man weird mashups. So
are these movies that Bob McCulley loves?
He likes Full Moon movies. Okay, I guarantee you he likes some of them.
There's no way he doesn't, based on these descriptions.
No, he's on board. He knows.
Okay. I told Jetta this felt like a midnight movie to me for sure, as opposed to the other 3. This felt like a midnight movie.
Well, there's something very funny to me, as I told you, about the fact that in large part it feels like a kid's movie, but then it has that demon cult part where it's like boobs suddenly. Yeah. So like that kind of just feels like trying to get something else in there to get more viewers besides just kids. Yeah. But it's like it is kind of a weird thing. But for the most part, this is like something that pretty much anyone could watch. It's not like it's really just a niche thing. Yeah, anyone would love watching Mordred save the world.
Like old Roger Corman stuff where it's like, you need to give me a movie, you can do whatever you want to it. Right. It needs blood, it needs boobs, it needs to like capitalize on something. Get out of my way. So,
AJ's cat just walked across his keyboard for those of you who aren't watching.
It's great. Yeah, Charles Band did the same thing as Corman did, just with video stores instead of drive-in theaters. And they made a movie, and he said there's not enough boobs, so they added a boob scene in. That is like exactly what that scene is.
And it just comes out of nowhere and then leaves.
The essence of a B movie.
Yeah. Well, to sum up, okay, and I've never had this sensation as I'm experiencing right now, which is that Jetta has sold me on a movie that I just watched that I wasn't crazy about, and now I feel crazy for not being crazy about it. So good
Less
work,
than
Jet.
24 hours. Think of the difference.
I know. You are a miracle worker.
Join the right side.
So to sum up, we have Artists and Models, Vibes, Sunday in New York, and Dr. Mordred. Check them all out. AJ and Jetta are crazy people, but they have heart. And they do. There is some sort of method in the madness, I think.
And may I say, Dr. Mordred is a cinephile. At the end of the day, all he wants to do is curl up with that special someone and watch a movie. So.
Which, at the end of the day, that's all we all want, right, Jetta?
Of course. Especially if it's Jeffrey Combs, but, doesn't have
the
to be.
obsession continues. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you both for making me laugh and for being on this show. I thoroughly enjoyed your comfort films, or your version of comfort, I should say.
Strange comfort. That's what you should call this episode. Strange comfort.
Strange comforts. We'll see you at the movies.